Hello everyone, today we're discussing what if the Tyranids invaded the Warhammer Galaxy 10 millennia earlier in the 30k. To be precise, during the Great Crusade right after Eleanor, to see just how well the Imperium would fare in 30k as opposed to 40k, we shall be discussing its strengths and weaknesses in several departments. First one, size, aka how many worlds did it have in 30k as opposed to 40k, and how many people does it hold under its control. Second, tech, aka what did it have in 30k that it doesn't have in 40k. Basically, what technology was lost during the Horus Heresy. 3. Manufacturing, pretty self-explanatory. How much equipment could it spew out in 30k as opposed to 40k. Fourth, military forces, navy, army and Astartes. Also self-explanatory. How many of these troops did it hold in 30k as opposed to nowadays in 40k, and what was their quality. Fifth, military leadership. Basically was the system of 30k with Primarchs leading Astartes alongside Imperial Navy and Army having combined chain of commands better than today's system of segregated command and Gilman being the sole ruler of the armed forces. Sixth, civil leadership, aka were Malkador and the Imperial Senate better rulers than the 40k's High Lords. Seventh, Xeno allies. Basically, does the current Imperium have better relations with Xeno, such as Eldar, than 30k's Imperium? But before we start covering all of these, more than 95% of you who watch my videos aren't subscribed, so if you enjoy this one, remember to click the like and subscribe button. Okay, enough shilling, let's just get into it. Starting off with the first department, which is size. And well, we know that Imperium in 40k consisted of approximately 1 million worlds, before the Great Rift that is, but we simply don't have such explicitly stated numbers in 30k. So my best guess, and remember this is my guess, is that they had approximately half of that in 30k, so half a million. Now I know that some people will be like, that's impossible, Great Crusade only lasted 200 years, even if each legion conquered 10 planets every year, that would still only be 3600 planets. And you'd be right, but most planets didn't need to be conquered. Malkador himself said that the Great Crusade was quite a bloodless affair, that 99.9% of the planets joined Imperium willingly, it was only that 0.1% that needed to be subjugated. So yeah, that's my reasoning for believing that Imperium consisted of 500,000 worlds in 30k. It's probably a little bit less than that, but for this scenario it will work just fine. Next, how many people did it hold under its control? Again, no solid numbers for 30k, but it's estimated that in 40k Imperium has a population of around 4 to 8 quadrillion people. Now we know that in 30k standards of living were much higher than in 40k, and as we all know, the higher the standards of living, the less kids each woman will have. So using the middle estimate of 40k, which is 6 quadrillion, then cutting it in half due to 30k Imperium only having half the planets, we get 3 quadrillion. Then cutting it further in half due to 30k being less religious, having better standards of living and easier access to contraceptives, we get that likely population of Imperium in 30k was 1.5 quadrillion. Okay, next department is its tech, and you know this one is pretty simple. 30k Imperium just had significantly better tech than 40k does. Now it ain't a complete stomp, because 40k still has the Primaris, which are way better than the regular OG Astartes. As much as that may hurt to say, it's unfortunately true. But when it comes to everything else, 30k is simply superior. 30k Guard had more powerful weapons and lasguns. Solar Auxilia could go toe to toe with Space Marine legions and even win. Meanwhile, their 40k alternative, Tempesta Scion, struggled to win engagements against orcs, where they outnumbered them 10 to 1. 30k Astartes also had better equipment, like for example Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Meanwhile, nowadays they are either stuck with box on legs or a machine that will turn you mad over time. I guess 40k has better armor for its Space Marines, but then again force fields and iron halos were way more common in 30k, and I would rather have that than 1 more inch of added plate. When it comes to navy, it's also not a contest. 30k was able to build 20, maybe 21 Gloriana class battleships in like a century. Meanwhile, Imperium nowadays struggles to build a dozen Emperor class battleships per millennia. Also in 40k, ships from 30k era are considered to be sacred due to how much more advanced and powerful they are as opposed to their current 40k designs. Okay, next department, manufacturing capabilities. And whilst there is no going around the fact that Imperium in 40k has more industrial planets, more forge worlds, and bigger workforce, I still think that they are on par with each other. Now, before you crucify me in the comments, let me explain. Yes, 40k has a bigger workforce, but that doesn't really mean shit. Imperium in 30k had way better managerial agencies alongside better manufacturing equipment. Let me ask you something. Let's say that there are two companies doing the same job of excavating a ground so that a foundation for a house can be placed. Company 1 only has one worker but has provided him with an excavator alongside existing in a country with little to no unnecessary regulations, where each paperwork can be submitted and reviewed in the same building, so the approval process will only take about 2 days. Company 2 has 3 workers but has only equipped them with shovels alongside existing in a country with extremely inefficient bureaucracy, where you have to go through like several proceedings that each take days to approve to finally start your work. Which one do you think is gonna finish its job first? Even though number 2 has more workforce, it's still less efficient and way slower than number 1. So at least in my humble opinion, I believe that 30k and 40k have comparable manufacturing capabilities. Next department is military force, aka the army and the navy. I already touched upon this in the tech section, but again, their equipment is probably 40 to 50 times better than in 40k. For goodness sake, in 30k ships had autoloaders, in 40k they use manual labor. So I won't be covering equipment discrepancies too much. If you want to know more about the equipment of the Solar Auxilia, just go watch my video on the topic. What I think is more interesting to focus upon is the great deal of coordination that the army and navy had in the 30k that's absent in the 40k. In 30k they were one organization, so they could communicate, share forces, have singular chain of command, singular logistics system, and so on. Also in 30k leadership was way more meritocratic than in 40k. You actually had to prove yourself in order to get command of the formations. In 40k you just have to have a recognizable surname and most of all be loyal. That's how you get in situations where zealotous commanders get into the positions of power that they have no right to be in due to their subpar command and logistical skills. Also in 30k integrated command structures were all the rage. Armor, artillery, mechanized/motorized forces with the assistance of air and naval elements would work in unison, under one structure to accomplish objectives. In 40k this effective system has all but disappeared due to reluctance of the Imperium to trust their commanders. Next department is the military leadership. Also a quick one, I don't think I have to tell you why Primarchs are simply better than normal people, but let me anyway. Let's speak of Vanilla Boy Gilman for this example. He was able to, in just a couple of decades, organize a counterattack 10 times larger than that of Great Crusade. He organized supply routes and repair yards across the lines of attack as to not slow down the crusading force. He calculated how many forces would be needed, their attrition and replacement rate, medical needs, food, water, recycling plants, and so much more. On a more strategic level, he reorganized the manufacturing base to be more efficient, removed bottlenecks, and so on and forth. Remember, he did all of this whilst not having any communication with the other side of the Imperium, the one on the other side of the rift. He only later got in comms with them and then started restructuring and reorganizing that side as well. To accomplish everything Gilman did by himself, you would no joke probably need a couple billion people, and they would also somehow have to have instant communication amongst each other. This is all even without taking their power on the battlefield into account. To be fair, their power is incredibly inconsistent. One time we have Sanguinius moving at light speed, other times we have Fulgrim not being able to dodge a 20mm bullet. But even with that taken into account, Primarchs like Sanguinius and Magnus are for sure powerful enough to wipe out an entire Tyranid fleet all by themselves. And I know that everyone is screeching about Big E at this moment, we'll get to him in a bit. But first we have to cover last department, the civil leadership. In 40k, it consists of High Lords who only look after either their own or their organization's best interests. Currently, they have grown a bit more competent, with Gilman appointing many good people to the positions, but they still pale in comparison to the sheer force of nature that is Malkador. He is the best diplomat that you can have, because he is a psyker and can read minds. He can also wipe the butts of even some Primarchs, as seen by Horus getting Force choked to near unconsciousness. He can also build institutions that can last for millennia, like Inquisition and the Grey Knights. Insert an overused joke about Inquisition blowing up planets for fun that's highly inaccurate to the lore. Okay, with that said, let's talk about, do the Tyranids stand any chance of success? Well, no. Let's talk about Big E. If he saw such a dangerous force heading towards the galaxy, which he almost certainly would, not only due to his own foresight abilities, but also due to Eldred's ones, he would have not gone to Terra to work on the webway and given full control to Horus. He would have gone to fortify the Imperial outskirts against the Tyranids, which no doubt Rogo Dorn would be greatly pleased to do. This also kind of stops heresy from happening, because Horus would remain by Big E's side all the time. Magnus would not destroy the webway project, because that project would be on an indefinite hiatus till the Tyranid issue gets resolved. Fulgrim may still pick up the blade, but Big E would probably sense the demonic presence in the sword and destroy it. Perturabo would still destroy his homeworld and kill civilians, but Big E would tell him that he does not give a shit and that he is his son and can do whatever he wants. So the only Primarchs that could still possibly betray the Emperor would be Lorgar, Kurz, Mortarion, Angron, and maybe, but probably not, Alfarius/Omegon. And there's no soft way of putting this, but the abortion team ain't beating the Horus, Sanguinius, Dorn, Perturabo, and Gilman lineup. Speaking of Gilman, one of his sons, Tigurius, managed to, I shit you not, mind probe and battle the hive mind itself. And Tigurius is a good psyker, don't get me wrong, but he ain't even in the top 15 40k psychers. He pales in comparison to the sheer raw power that the Big E possesses. If Tigurius' power is a bucket of water, then the Big E's is an ocean. And even that's quite possibly an undersell. If he encounters a hive mind, there is a non-0% chance that he is gonna simply obliterate it and take its place. Now wouldn't that be a sight, the Imperium possessing an army of biological machines? But even without this, if the Tyranids can't take the galaxy in 40k, what chance do they have in 30k? In 40k, a viable strategy to destroy entire Tyranid fleets is by ramming Emperor-class battleships into the heart of the Tyranid fleet before blowing up the warp reactors and sending the Nids to hell. The only reason this strategy is not more common is because Emperor-class battleships are so stupidly expensive and quite possibly in the newer times impossible to build. But even without this, in 30k AdMech had way more leeway when it came to research, and there is no doubt in my mind that they would be able to make bioweapons that only eat Tyranid flesh, kinda like the Tau did. Failing this, Imperium still has 18 Primarchs, millions of Astartes, hundreds of millions of Solar Auxilia, billions of guardsmen, and so much more. Let's also not forget, in 30k using nukes would be a norm and a mundane thing. In 40k it's a whole event due to how little of them get produced each year. I could go on about every advantage the Imperium possesses, but this has just become a Tyranid bullying session, so I'll stop it here before the Tyranid players start crying. Okay, that would be it from me. If you liked this video, remember to smash the like button, comment any interesting thoughts and opinions that you may have in the comment section. Until the next time, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.